everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Alyssa Corum here, and I am joined by Justin Nielsen on today's show. We are going to be taking a look at the mixed session that saw outperformance yet again from small caps, and underneath the surface, maybe a little bit of rotation. But Justin, what do you have for us?
Well, we'll certainly talk a little bit about that, but we'll start with some look at some of the security software stocks, in particular Zscaler today. Leslie's also retaking a breakout, and we'll end with Hilltop, one of the regional banks that was also looking strong.
Okay, first, a look at the Russell 2000. So small caps outpacing the gains today, up 1.3%. Justin, we had the NASDAQ up 0.5%, the Dow and the S&P finishing down. The Dow down about 0.4%, the S&P down 0.1%. So we are yet again seeing small caps taking the lead. So, flashes here and there, seeing some strength in small caps, which has been nice.
Right. And some of the areas that were getting hit today were, those areas that we've seen being very strong, the materials, the industrials, some of the steel stocks, things like that we've been seeing very strong lately. Those were down today. Now, as you mentioned, the NASDAQ was actually up, about 0.5%. And the small caps. Now, the small caps, one of the things that was looking really strong in that area was the healthcare. There was a lot of green as I was looking at my heat map, a lot of green in the healthcare area, which makes up a decent percentage in the Russell 2000. So that's something to be aware of. Healthcare, of course, has been kind of on the rocks for a little bit. If you look at XLV, for example, that's one that's just been, kind of in this little bit of a downtrend, and but it hit its 50-day moving average line and looked like it was getting a little bit of a rebound there. Tech has certainly been coming on a little bit stronger. We've been seeing more strength in the NASDAQ. The S&P 500 though, and Dow Jones Industrials, they're right there at new, spitting distance to new high territory. And even though it was down, it was still closing. The S&P 500 was still closing near the top of its range. And when you consider the strength of Friday, you know what? It's not bad to have a little bit of a pause.
Exactly. So it feels like conditions have continued to improve. There's still buying opportunities and a potential either widening of the breadth or a little bit of rotation out of what's been working. What do you think about that?
Well, it's still, you still have, again, you can't really count oil and gas out yet. There's still so much strength there that you saw last week. Financials, even though materials kind of took a little break today, it's one day, so it's one of those things where you have to kind of have a few days to see if a trend is going, and so that's what I'm looking for right now. I like the pause, a little bit of a breather that the S&P 500 took, just kind of staying actually in the upper part of Friday's range, but it's a little bit too soon to see which area is potentially going to be flexing its muscles here as we continue to new highs. Hopefully, we'll see.
Okay, well, let's check in on Zscaler, ticker ZS, to see perhaps if security software is coming back to life. We saw a big move to the upside from Zscaler on its quarterly earnings report, and it did drift lower, but it's had a nice move today, up 3.7%. And I'll go ahead and also flip on over to the weekly chart. Justin, what do you make of this base structure?
Well, I'm kind of looking at this as a double bottom like structure. So you did have the undercut. It's important for the double bottom that you have that second low undercut the first low, and that's what we saw in Zscaler. Originally, I was actually going to talk about CrowdStrike, which looks very similar, but Ed actually put Zscaler on my radar, and what I liked a little bit better on Zscaler was that you did have the undercut, whereas with CrowdStrike you didn't. So now we've kind of put in a little bit of a handle here, and if you go back to the daily, you can kind of see that was breaking the downtrend of that handle. So that's looking interesting, and you did have a little bit of a pickup in volume above average. You had some real strong volume on its earnings report as it gapped up. So the fact that it was able to hold a lot of that gap, and now it's seeing a resurgence, that's something that I think looks positive. Now, you do have a very weak group. This is 130 out of 197. It has been out of favor, but if we are to see this resurgence in tech, this is something that might see, might be participating a little bit more. And so we'll have to see if that relative strength improves. But so far, the pattern looks interesting here.
All right. And elsewhere, LESL in the group ranked number 4 out of 197.
Right.
Retail leisure products, we've been focusing on a lot, up 5%. Heavy turnover here after coming back down after its breakout day from this trend line. We saw a move higher today and now officially closing in this buy zone of the handle.
Right. So, at first, just a couple days ago, it did get above that 30.95 buy point. If you just kind of look at this as a cup with handle, it did get above that. Wasn't able to hold it. Wasn't able to close above it. But I think, the trend line that you draw, that downtrend line, I think was still a good place for an entry. Hopefully, you were able to get in a little bit earlier. But if not, the fact that it retook that area, I think is strong. You will see sometimes stocks will give up a little bit of ground, but not much in this case. And it retook that. And just look at the volume over this last week. You saw really strong volume on Thursday, really strong volume today. Not very strong comparatively on that downdraft on Friday. So right now, it looks like the blue volume is definitely overwhelming the pink, and that's what we like to see.
Yeah, some nice technical action. And then looking back on the weekly, the relative strength line almost to highs, but even
Yeah.
though it's not quite at highs, it is well above the start of the handle. So
Right.
you have
And
that as
and
well.
and you have a lot of group members that are also, looking very strong. I mean, we looked at HAYW today. We also looked at Pool on IBD Live. But if you want to search out elsewhere, you've got ASO that has earnings coming up. You've got the polar. There's just so many in this group. Leisure was always one of Bill O'Neill's favorite areas to look. And retail was another area that he liked. So that group is kind of the combination of both, right? It's retail and leisure products. So that's definitely a place that still seems to be getting a lot of attention.
All right. Well, Leslie's on the list, and let's wrap things up with a look at HTH, not HTHT. Fingers went a little too fast there. But Hilltop Holdings, a regional bank that we looked at this morning on IBD Live, it turned out to have a pretty strong day, up 2.2%. I'll flip on over to the intraday chart really quickly. Is this something, Justin, that maybe you would keep an eye on the intraday chart to find a good entry for something like this?
Yeah, for some people, maybe they don't want to be, necessarily purchasing in the first, 10, 15 minutes. But if you look at that intraday chart, what it did was it kind of pulled back a little bit intraday, and then it broke a downtrend. So in the same way we'll use that on a daily chart, you can use that on an intraday chart, and that gave you a pretty decent entry. Or you could have just looked for it to cross above that previous high on the intraday chart. So first hour high is something that we'll use at times. And what I wanted to point out about Hilltop is that if you look at KRE, which is the ETF that tracks the regional banks, it was up. It was looking okay. But Hilltop looks very different. It looks much stronger. And so while you can certainly play this group because there's a lot of regional banks that are still looking strong, this one is definitely showing more leadership characteristics. And this is a group that's doing very well. So you have these regional banks. There's a lot of the different groups. So this is the West Southwest. They're based in Texas, but if you look at the top 40 or top 80 of the industry groups, you will see a lot of these regional bank groups in there. So there still seems to be a lot of money flowing into the financials, specifically the regional banks. So if you want to get kind of the best of the best, this is one that was looking very strong. And you can see that relative strength is starting to improve a little bit.
Yep. Compelling idea in the financial area. Well, thank you so much for that, Justin. And thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you tune in tomorrow to tomorrow's IBD Live show. You never know what actionable stocks we may be highlighting in real time then. So we hope you check it out, investors.com/IBD Live. And then we also have a webinar coming up tomorrow afternoon, all about preparing for the opening bell. Chris, Dave, and Ed are all going to be a part of that. So go to investors.com/webinar for details on that. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.